Hey guys, let's talk about books. I feel like actually I need to do that again because I get a bit of a crazy eye situation when I say let's talk about books. An intense kind of let's talk about books, you and me. It's a little bit intense, let's put it that way. Well, anyway, we're off to a great start. I thought I would try something different this week, trying to fit more videos into my routine by just doing a weekly reading life update video. This is something that I see Cathy Grimm from the Grimm Reader do, and I really like it as a more sustainable format for keeping the videos coming even in a busy time of life, which when is it not busy, let's be real. So I'm going to try it in these brief 15 minutes I have before everybody gets home from work and I have to do all the after work things like cook dinner and be a parent. Before that though, let's talk about books. This week I finished 2 books. I was reading The Notebook, A History of Thinking on Paper by Roland Allen. The call number on that one is 676.2823, which I can rattle off the top of my head and not from the screen behind you at all. That call number relates to stationery. And this was awesome. I really enjoyed it. It was very fast, very readable. History of The Notebook. Starts out with an anecdote of moleskin notebooks, which actually, for someone who loves them so much, there isn't one on my desk anymore. The history of the moleskin and where it came from and how it just blew up in popularity in the 2010s, I want to say, or just before the 2010s. And like every white man, thinker, productive dude was toting one around. Steve Jobs probably. And it just blew up, and then all sorts of competitors in the space. In particular, this is the one that I used, not this one, because it's full, but the Rhodia ones, because, can I show you a page? That's my reading log. They, the Rhodias use Clairefontaine paper, and they can take a fountain pen, which I use, where the moleskins can't, they're just normal pens. So that was super interesting to start out with that. And then it goes back in time to like Renaissance Italy, where the confluence of Renaissance thinking with paper and binding, paper becoming cheap, binding becoming cheap, and then access to paper for, famous artists to have paper to practice their craft before they painted masterpieces, and how that became part of the revolution of art, get perspective and realism in art versus pre-Renaissance Italian art, which was a lot more abstract and not trying to represent reality, but trying to represent symbols. It went through different places that the notebook is used and instances like Isaac Newton's notebooks, and then when he published his notebooks after his, theory of gravity and stuff and calculus, he redacted them a lot to say, like, this was all my thinking and how I came up with these ideas, and redacted the parts where he used work from other philosophers to influence his thinking. There was how Darwin took notebooks on the Beagle, and at the end, actually, an interesting chapter on how ship's logs, when paper had become so prolific and so cheap, ship's logs got really detailed with taking readings of weather and position, and now those ship's logs are being used to measure climate change on the water as opposed to climate change on the land, which is really cool to see like big history data being used in that way. So stuff like that. Then I went through, one of the final chapters was about Ryder Carroll and the development of the bullet journal method, because it's just a massive change in the way that people use notebooks. And as you can tell, I had a lot of fun. It was very easy to read. The chapters were mostly very short, so I could read at least one before I fell asleep of an evening. I usually get 10 pages, I've realised, of an evening in my Kindle reading, so that's about the length of the chapters, or or convenient breaks in the book for reading. And in general, I had a lot of fun. Actually, another cool thing that I learned, which was in that climate change chapter, actually it was a footnote in the chapter, was looking at the climate impact of notebooks and the sustainability. And if you have a notebook like the Moleskine was the example, that is FSC certified, which is a sustainable forestry certification, I think, you'd need to fill 12 to have the same impact on the climate as a quarter pound beef burger. So forego your beef burger and buy notebooks instead and use them. So that was very cool. I had a lot of fun with that one, and it's probably something that I will pick up in paperback when it's released in Australia, which it isn't yet, but soon, I think, November or December this year. The other thing that I read this week, I listened to it actually, was A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. I have a physical copy here, but I listened to a recording by Natalie Dormer, which was great. She performed it well. And this is a pick for a book club. It's a pick for a book club that I need to run the discussion for. It was my pick, and so I thought, geez, I better read it. Really struck me in this. So A Room of One's Own is an elaboration or based on a speech that Virginia Woolf gave in the 1920s. This was published in 1929. Is there a contextual essay in here? No. Basically, the premise is she was answering the question in this speech about women and fiction, and she took it to be, if women are in fiction, are writing fiction, are in this writing space of fiction, they need a room of one's own and an independent income. She says 500 a year, which 500 a week maybe. So that was her thesis, was people who aren't white men need a room of one's own and an independent income in order to do the creative work of creating fiction, creating poetry, of basically participating in creative life and being recognised for it. She makes the point continually here that times have changed within the last 10 years. This is 1929. Within the last 10 years, opportunities have opened up for women. You can publish under your own name now. Why aren't you getting out and doing these things? It's because you don't have a room of your own and an independent income. But this was nearly 100 years ago, and the point stands. You need a room of one's own and an independent income to be here on YouTube. I don't have a room of my own, but I'm here in the room by myself. I've got it set up the way that I like. Nobody else is here to do a creative work and an independent income to fund the work. So that actually really shook me how true that stands. And of course, this is about women in fiction, but it stands for everybody. Every person needs access to these two things in order to participate in creative life, which, if that's not an argument for universal basic income, I don't know what. Ooh, what's that? I bought a car and the car has an app, which is so ridiculous. And it's just telling me that I need to check the multiple vehicle alerts in my app. I do not appreciate the app because it's judging me on how well or poorly that I drive, and I don't need that negativity in my life. All right. So that's the two books that I read. In general, this was perfectly fine and be a great book club book to discuss. And I might have more thoughts about it after we have the book club discussion. But it was quick. It was only a 4-hour listen. Highly recommend if you are interested in Down with the Patriarchy that you at least read this book once. Currently, I've got so much going on reading currently. I just did a check-in video where I talked about what I'm currently reading. So the thing that has changed from there is what I'm actively listening to and reading is on my Kindle. I am reading a book called What Moves the Dead, which I bought this week. It is by T. Kingfisher, and it is a retelling, an expanded retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher, which is a short story by Edgar Allan Poe. Let me find a blurb for that. What moves the dead kingfisher? I think the publisher's website would come up first, but no. I haven't read The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and when I was Googling that, I discovered that there's a TV series of it now. I don't really TV, so I didn't know that. The blurb says, when Alex Easton, a retired soldier, receives word that their childhood friend Madeline Usher is dying, they race to their ancestral home of the Ushers in the remote countryside of Ruravia. But they find there is a nightmare of fungal growths and possessed wildlife surrounding a dark, pulsing lake. Madeline sleepwalks and speaks in strange voices at night, and her brother Roderick is consumed with a mysterious malady of the nerves. Aided by a redoubtable British mycologist and a baffled American doctor, Alex must unravel the secret of the House of Usher before it consumes them all. I'm having a lot of fun. Definitely spooky October horror, unsettling vibes so far. I'm really enjoying it. Plus all the gentle and not so gentle digs at Americans. It's really nice. This is in a series called Sworn Soldier, and I don't know what the second one is about, if it is just those people in the world, if it's more Poe retelling or a retelling of another horror novel. I guess I will find out when I read it. T. Kingfisher wrote Nettle and Bone, which I really enjoyed, and so now I'm trying to get into their other stuff. So that's what I'm reading on my Kindle in the evenings, at nighttime. And what I bought this week. I borrowed from the library Death of a Hollow Man, which is book 2 of Midsummer Murders by Carolyn Graham. Does this have a blurb? Backstage nerves are fraying and revenge is on its way. Oh, you don't need to hear the blurb. Basically, it's about an amateur dramatic society, and obviously there's going to be murders, but so far there's just all the introduction of the characters and then getting into people's private lives and motivations, and there's a bit of adultery happening now and some secrets, and there hasn't been a murder yet. How far am I in? 20% in. We've got to have a murder in a minute. Very, very soon. But this is also, I've seen this episode of the TV show 100 million times, so I know what's going to happen. It's just interesting to listen to the actual books. And I'm listening to this. I paused my reading of Odyssey by Stephen Fry to get to this because it's a library book and I was in the queue for ages and it came up. You know how it goes with the library. I also paused Odyssey to listen to the Virginia Woolf because book club's coming up. So anyway, in theory, I'm still listening to Odyssey by Stephen Fry, which it's very Stephen Fry in these Greek myth retellings, but I did read probably from The Guardian, in The Conversation, if I can find it, I will link it, an article reviewing this by somebody who's probably a scholar of ancient Greek or English literature. And they said, and I agree, that the women in these stories is lacking, and you can tell that Fry is really glossing over those parts of women deliberately because there's probably just not enough space. It's not fitting their retelling. The sources probably don't emphasize the women, which is why we have bookstores full of feminist retellings of Greek myth and other myths and legends. But some of it definitely would have gained more context, focusing more on women. There was a bit about Electra and Clytemnestra and Helen in the stuff with Troy and Agamemnon and stuff. But in general, the story of the women is lacking. It's very casual retelling, informal, and it's fine. It's perfectly fine to listen to, but if this was your first accessing of these myths, you would probably either enjoy it and look deeper or say that was cool and move on. I haven't been reading anything else. And also I'm really prioritizing the audiobooks at the moment because I'm really in the mood to do craft, and audiobooks are a thing I do when I'm crafting a lot, simply to occupy my brain while I'm doing the crafting. And we'll see how we like this format. I still have to edit the thing. Let's find out how coherent I am after working all day and then filming a video. But if you're into it, then let's keep going with this. Please let me know what you're reading at the moment, even if you have nothing good or bad to say about it. I just want to know. I will see you hopefully next week. Hopefully these will be weekly.